it's Tanya, and today I was reminded of my time working in the child welfare system as well as being in the child welfare system. And I feel like a lot of people struggle to know, when do I make a call to the child welfare system, like a hotline, or like when do I report abuse or neglect? When is that appropriate? Or sometimes wondering, should I call in a report on that? When is it appropriate, or what should I report? And there is a lot of speculation in regards to all of that information, but today I kind of wanted to dive into when it's appropriate and that type of stuff. So to get into it, the child welfare system is called different things between the different states, and I wrote some down, so I'm going to read some. So there's Child Protective Services, DFCS, DCS, Human Services, Child and Family Services, DCF. It boils down to child abuse or neglect hotlines or places that you can contact in order to report those things so a child can be safe. And each state has their own specific number, so I'm actually going to include that in the notes below. So make sure if you have something that you do want to call in by the end of this, that there's a bunch of different states and all of them kind of have their own rules and regulations. But let's talk about it a little more. Most states actually have a rule, and it's called mandated reporters. So what the heck is a mandated reporter? What is that? So a mandated reporter is if you see something like child abuse or neglect happening, you're required to call that into a hotline and report the abuse or neglect. And I think most of the states are mandated reporters, but you just share the information that you know with the hotline. This also means that if you don't report, you actually get in trouble. So that means you could have to pay fines, you could get a misdemeanor, you could go to jail. It just depends on the situation and what's going on. So to me, that's pretty serious. And kind of scary if you're not going to report and you can get put in jail because of it. So let's talk about some scenarios of when do I call in a report? When is that appropriate? So scenario one, imagine you have a young child in your neighborhood and you often see marks or bruises on them that's somewhere that generally they can't reach or wouldn't normally fall on. So like maybe on the backs of their arms or some location where it's just constant and it's kind of bizarre to you. Maybe there's just constant signs that maybe they are being abused, or they even say to you that they are being abused. That's something that you want to report. Scenario number two, something a little more extreme. You're in the grocery store. You're walking around, minding your own business, picking up things off of different aisle spaces. What are those called? Why don't I know words? Anyway, you're grabbing things that you need to make dinner tonight, and you look over and you see a child, and they're picking something off the shelf too, and they walk it over to their parents. They want to put it in the cart, and the parent starts freaking out, and they start hitting the child. The child is crying, begging them to stop, and they're probably leaving some marks or bruises, or it's just very obvious abuse. That's probably a call to the police. And generally the police will call in the report, or they'll tell you what to do from there. Why I say that is the police can probably get there a little quicker than a child welfare worker, and we want to get somebody there a little bit more immediately. Scenario number three, last scenario I'm doing. A child tells you that their parent has been MIA. They're not around. They don't know where they've been. They've been cooking, cleaning, doing all the chores around their house, and they're doing it all on their own. They don't know where their parent's at. In fact, they don't know where they're at most of the time. Maybe their parent is always sleeping and they never helping them out. They're not getting bathed regularly and they kind of smell. Things like that are showing that the parent is not being very involved. That's neglect. That's a call that needs to be made. I know these scenarios are kind of weird and I'm bringing light to dark situations, but I feel like it's a good way to kind of warm you up and realize that it's okay to make a call, and it's actually good to make those calls. Sometimes situations aren't as black and white as these scenarios, and sometimes you question if you should make a report or not. Generally, if you're questioning, that's probably a report that you need to make. Anytime that you have concerns for children's safety, a child says something that's concerning to you, if something is currently happening to a child in front of you, those are good reasons to call something in. So why would you want to call in a report? And I know that sounds kind of silly, like, Tanya, that's kind of common sense. Why do you want to call in a report? Well, you're probably right, but it's kind of self-explanatory, but sometimes a child can't get themselves out of a situation, and you're the only person standing up for them and standing up for their needs, and there's nobody else that is willing to do that for them. When you call in a report to the hotline, they decide if it's going to be investigated or not. And it is state specific, county specific, different kinds of situations there. But if you call in a report, it doesn't 100% mean that it will be investigated. I think they all have their own criteria of what qualifies for being approved or disapproved. So I can't speak to all of that. And I guess if you have questions, maybe you can reach out to your state or Child Welfare Services, and they can give you kind of that information. Anyway, they're the ones that will investigate. You don't have to do anything further. They're the ones that are going to go out and investigate if the things are true, and they go and talk to the family. When they talk to the family, they're generally not allowed to say that it was you that made the report. Now, families can make guesses and try to figure out who it is, but if they guess right or wrong, generally the people investigating aren't allowed to say who it is. After that, they investigate and see what's going to happen next. Are they going to be involved or not? So let's next talk about false reporting. So false reporting is what it sounds like. So you maybe are in a nasty divorce proceeding or in a nasty guardianship deciding moment or months that have been going on, and you're going through that. And you decide that you're going to make up a story to try to make the other person look bad. So you make that report of the false information and it is false. You can actually get in trouble for that too. Now, if you're questioning if something is happening behind closed doors, that's still okay. But if you're actively making a false report, you can get in trouble for that. So don't make things up and lie. That's a good takeaway to take away from that. What if somebody is telling you not to report something? So this gets a little hairy and is kind of uncomfortable. So maybe it's a school or a church or a community leader or a friend. Generally, we still want to make the report. If somebody's trying to sway you, you are still that mandated reporter and you still need to make the report, as awkward as it could be. I know some locations try to handle the situation in-house and they try to deal with it and not have to include the child welfare system in general, but that doesn't 100% work all the time, and that means that it's not on the child welfare system's radar. So like maybe reports have been coming in and it's the same thing, and they can track like this happened in January and March and this and all these other years and times, and so they can see that more than one report is happening. But if nothing's reported, they can't track all of that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, what if the child welfare system fails and they fail the child? Sadly, the system isn't perfect. We have imperfect people working for an imperfect system. They're doing their best, but sometimes their best isn't always good enough. Not everything is going to work out perfectly. People lie. like parents, they can lie, or they can train their children to lie. So they're coaching them and saying, hey, say this and lie, or else you're gonna get a spanking whenever they leave, things like that. Or I'm gonna do these awful things to you, that kind of stuff. The system might miss some things. Somebody might fall through the cracks. But I do think it's still worth a try for you to do your part and put the effort in to make those reports. And even if you have to call multiple times, the main goal of the child welfare system is to help kids. Even though sometimes it doesn't always work, the main goal is to help kids and help families and help educate the families so they can either keep their children or get their kids back. This can also mean, though, that children can go back with families that have abused them. Hopefully they've been rehabilitated or they've learned things, but sometimes they haven't, sadly, and they can put on a good show. Think about it, you can go through the motions for a while. I'm sure that anybody can, so why can't the parents do that? But hopefully they're not, and hopefully they're learning from past mistakes. In the end, again, the goal is to help kids and children, and if you're calling in the report, you're doing your part, so you're doing a good job. So my tip of the day, if you see something happening, report it. And the child can't always stand up for themselves, and so it's really cool that you're willing to stand up for them in the way that you can. And maybe you get involved in other ways to support the child behind the scenes, but when you're making that report, you're at least helping it get in the system, and so they can track all of that. I would say err on the side of caution and make the report. Also, if you know that you're completely making something up to make somebody look bad, don't call that in. Don't get yourself in trouble. Like I said, I'm gonna list the resources that I've talked about below. So if you feel like you need to make a report, I would highly recommend that you do and try to put the children first. And I think that is a great resource to utilize, and it covers most of the states, at least, I think. So I think that it's a good resource to use. The nice thing is you don't have to have all the answers. If you're calling in a report, you can say, I don't know, if you don't know everything, and that's okay. That's their job to figure it out themselves. Don't make up stuff and you're golden. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Don't talk to strangers unless they give you candy, and I'll see you next time. Bye!